Fuel and flow. Happy to be here. Excited to have a really good conversation about movement, about nutrition, about tips and tricks that you have that we should all be aware of on this, I think, quite interesting topic. But before we dive in, a couple of things from me. So, for those that haven't had an opportunity to maybe join one of these before or participate in anything that we've done, my name's Janet Pope. I am the founder of a nonprofit that I started in 2021 called The Good Lounge. The Good Lounge exists to share resources with Black folks, LGBTQ plus folks, and women on topics related to financial, physical, and mental well being. And so, really, I wanted to make sure that I gave access to conversations that maybe everyone wasn't having that we needed to have on these different topics, but also more importantly, the resources that can support us as we continue to evolve and take better care of ourselves on that 360 degrees of well-being. So really, really excited for this topic, excited for Whitney and Tiffany to share their expertise with us in this fine evening. I'm coming to you from South Carolina today, which is a little different for me, but happy to be here and looking forward to this conversation. Let me say just one quick disclaimer. We're in 2025, and I feel like I need to just make sure we're all on the same page. So the views and opinions expressed in this webinar are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily reflecting any official policy or position of any company, organization, employer, or other agency that they may be affiliated with. The content shared is intended for informational and entertainment purposes. Okay, with that, let me introduce our speakers. Tiffany, let me turn it over to you to give a quick introduction of yourself first.
Okay, my name is Tiffany. I have been a physical therapist assistant for 17 years now, specializing in spinal cord injury, brain injury rehab. And I am also the owner, creator, and CEO of the Bulls Bayou all-purpose seasoning line.
Awesome, perfect. And Whitney?
Hi, everyone. My name is Whitney Williams-Black. I'm a full spectrum doula, student midwife. I'm heading for a certified nurse midwifery, master's of science in nursing. Um, I am an herbalist. I'm a gardener, a sister, a partner. We own land here in North Carolina, which is Eno Lumbee land. But I'm from Durham, North Carolina, which I think is Muskogee Creek land. And yeah, super excited to just share all the things that I've gathered and be able to give it back today.
Awesome. I'm excited based on the herbalist hashtag or flash, I guess I should say. Want to learn a little more from you on that. So as we dive in, my first question, and definitely wherever you're joining from, whether you're on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, show us some love in the chat. We can see your comments, and we will definitely take your questions as we have time for them. And there'll be some giveaways today as well. So definitely utilize the chat unless you're driving. Drive safely. Okay, the first question that we have: how do you define care when it comes to the body? And how has that definition shifted over time, as it currently feels like we're in a bit of an era of more burnout and chronic illness? And let me start, Tiff, with you based on the physical therapist hat.
Mhm. Okay. So I think early on in my career, I was always focused on the outcomes, fixing the problem, getting better, trying to get back to baseline. But what I learned over the years is we don't even have to be there. You know what I mean? Preventive care is going to be key, in anything we do. So one thing, listening to your body, respecting its signals, supporting your body through movement and what you put in your body. I feel like, consistency is care, not just trying to fix the problem when you have an exacerbation or when you have, an issue, and I think we're all guilty of that. Sometimes, look, when I know sometimes I put on my blazer and it's a little bit tight, I'm like, okay, nah, I got to get back to the gym. And then I'll start going to the gym, lose a few pounds. All right. And then I'm back at it, and it's a cycle. So I think the key is going to be trying to find some kind of pattern of consistency of doing what we need to do and listening to our bodies. If you have knee issues, if you have brittle bones, every pound you gain is going to add 4 pounds to your joint. When the weather flares up, you're going to feel it in your joints. You're going to start to get arthritic. You're going to start having long-term problems. So the key is trying to fix that beforehand. Make sure you're eating the right things. Like I said before, making sure you move. And then movement can be in a bunch of different types of avenues. It doesn't have to be going to the gym. It could be taking a hike with your friends. It could be dancing in your living room, twice a week. So, just doing whatever you need to do to try to avoid, chronic long-term illnesses, as well as making sure you're staying up on your doctor's appointments. When they recommend, when you're 40 plus as a woman, go get your mammogram. When you're a guy, when you're 45, you need to go get your colonoscopy. Doing those preventive measures helps a lot.
Yeah, that resonates. Consistency is key, is big. I think somewhere we know that, right? But we still really struggle to find the consistency for ourselves. Absolutely. I also have seen and had a lot of conversations where people get discouraged if they can't, if I can't go do the big workout that I want to do that's going to last an hour,
right?
I just do nothing.
Right.
Versus maybe doing the 20-minute workout or even the 10-minute jump rope or whatever, and finding kind of that consistency around the 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I've definitely seen the struggles based on some of what you're sharing. And I'll probably come back to you on a little bit more around what is the bare minimum that we should be thinking about to at least maintain. I've seen a little bit of research on some of that. So I'll probably come back to you on that in a minute. Okay. So Whitney, same question to you. How do you define care when it comes to the body, and how has that definition shifted over time?
Yeah. Well, I have to agree on some points with Tiffany. I do think that consistency is important, but I think the way that I've learned to reframe it, the deeper I go into midwifery, is that consistency isn't just frequency. It's not how often we do something, but it's also how does it feel. So an hour workout might not feel right for some folks, like my partner is a huge consistency person. We can only eat bananas in this house when they are firm, and consistency is so important. So yeah, it should also be about how does it feel, and especially being, a student midwife, when we're telling people to, to go to all of these annual or biannual or, repetitive, doctor's appointments. While those are important, they don't always feel great. And I think especially as Black and queer folks, we can just kind of acknowledge that it doesn't always feel great to be in that space. And so what are the other modalities of care that are super important? So for me, care is and has become, showing up to my best friend's house and working with her to put soup on the table and then in the freezer, right? Making sure that she has that type of nutritive care. It can look like, sitting on the couch and venting and talking when folks don't have, $200 an appointment to go and see a therapist, and being that for each other. And so care for me has really become about community. What are the strengths and weaknesses of the village that we have? How can we be leaning on people for their strengths and weaknesses? And I think especially as I've shifted from being a doula to being a midwife, really, having boundaries around this is what I can do to support you. And this is where my scope runs out. This is where I actually can't do more. And I either need to refer you or let me introduce you to this other person in our village who can hold you in this way. And so, care care is about caring, and I think too often we as women or people who've been socialized as femmes feel that we have to do a lot of that caring work. But for me, caring again has just been, what does it feel like? Does it feel good for me to be the nurturing person in this space? No. Okay, so who else can do it? And it also doesn't have to look like somebody that looks like me. It can be somebody else, stepping in to pick up this load. And so caring is sharing. Caring is about sharing that load. And yeah, and just considering like how can we as a community show up for each other better, especially when we know the medical industrial complex that is, or these clinics and doctors and all that, they don't always support us in the ways that we need to be supported. So it's definitely evolved, and I feel like I could talk and talk and talk and talk about care, but yeah, it's changed over the 9 years that I've been in this work.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of great nuggets for me. I mean, one, just the comment around community in general. There are listeners who they know how I feel about good community. I'd also say, and I'd love if there are any men listening, for men to comment in the chat as well. I know that I have, to your point around like, it's been great, an evolution around people actually saying like, do you have the capacity for the conversation that I'm about to have with you? Or do you have space for this right now? And that has evolved in the last, I'll say 3 to 5 years, where I'm seeing more and more people ask that question before they kind of go off on their vent session or whatever it is they need to get out. And I've loved that. Like, usually my answer is yes in that moment when they're asking that, but just the fact that people are really being thoughtful about how we engage and support each other, to your point around that couch session, I think is really, really important. And I've appreciated that in my own community. I also, and where I was going with the conversation for men, like I found myself, because I have really found some great avenues in different friend groups to have different types of conversations, to your point. And, at 40 plus,
Yeah.
you have friends in different stages of life, right? I literally have friends with children. I have friends who are single. I have friends everywhere in between. I have friends who are in certain places in their career journeys, and friends that are in certain places in their homeowner journey, and everything in between. It's certainly a bit of a melting pot. But I appreciate the fact that I have those groups and I can have these conversations. And I don't know if I always see that with men that I love, like cousins, brothers, uncles, etc. And I'm almost curious of like, where are men finding that similar type of community? And as a nonprofit that's supportive of Black men, right, as a part of the outreach of the communities that I'm trying to support and tap into, I think I'm a little curious about that, because I feel like Black women are certainly supporting each other and we're finding each other and we're building community. LGBTQ is finding that in different avenues, right? And we're upon June, we're gonna see like
Uh,
lots of
a lot
lots
of
of
performative
rainbows,
community.
a little bit of performative community for sure.
Well, and I
Maybe a
think
lot of it.
and I think unfortunately, especially for Black men and even for queer men, we could say there is a lot of performative community. And so one of the invitations, and I loved when Tiff started talking a little bit about learning the signs of your body. When I'm teaching people how to get pregnant, how not to get pregnant, how to stay not pregnant, how to get unpregnant, it's about looking at the signs that your body is showing you. And so I call it body literacy. And so other people might call it fertility awareness method, but I just call it body literacy, because we all can be doing that. And so if you are listening to this and you are a man, a queer man, a trans man, and you're not quite sure how to tap into community, try tapping into you first and see how learning what you need and how you need people to show up can. And then just always remember, if I'm sitting on the couch with my best friend and I'm telling them about me, and then I don't ever ask them how are they, it's therapy. And I open something. And so for us to be in community, it has to be reciprocal. And so again, what do you need in your body, in your space? What is your body telling you? Tell somebody and then ask them how are they and how can you show up for them. And so again, really giving people that mirror and saying, look at you first, step into the space and take care of you first, and then come and be with us. And I think that's a wonderful way for us to invite everybody, but especially to invite masculine folks into the space, to remind them that we care about them too. And
Yeah.
we will need them in different avenues to show up for us, and we want them around.
Yeah.
And that's hard as a queer femme. I ain't gonna lie to you, that's hard.
No, I feel you. I mean, you're preaching now, honestly. I love it. You said a lot of really good things there too. And I recently read something about it's more therapy than maybe the physical aspect of being in touch with their body, but like how you, it was basically saying like, how do you feel after your interactions and certain things? So whether that's work or friendship or relationship, whatever. And it was getting into like, if you feel it in your chest, there's one thing that's happening. If you feel it in your head, there's another thing that's happening. If you feel it all over your body, there's another. And it kind of got into like the emotions of where you feel things, which I've heard therapists talk about, but this was like just a real clear list that I thought was really, really helpful in terms of how we're thinking about things. So a lot of really good nuggets, Whitney. Let me move us on, or we'll just stay here forever because you're getting into some good stuff. So maybe pulling on that thread a little bit more for women, people of color, LGBTQ plus, taking care of our body has often been shaped by urgency. So like something hurts, I'm in pain, or limited by access. So healthcare cost is one example of access. And we have also expanded a narrative anchored around fixing or disciplining our body, which in some cases could be harmful. So can you share some everyday practices that enable us to be more intentional in how we care for our body? And I'll start, Whitney, with you this time.
Yeah, that body literacy piece comes up again and again and again. Um, and I'll say just this one thing. I wish that we would lean on each other more for that knowledge. I wish that we would start the body literacy early, because then it becomes, one, less jarring, and two, we can catch things so much earlier. I can't tell you, we talked so much about how Black women experience breast cancer, and I wonder how many young Black femmes, or Black femmes period, grew up and never really touched their breasts unless it was sexual or they were feeding someone else. And I just wish that we had started so much earlier, right? Understanding our bodies and really seeing like, oh no, that's different. Same thing with pregnancy. And the capacity for pregnancy. I wish that we celebrated in the ways that we used to, in our history, the coming of the blood, and really start people early looking at their anatomy, understanding how their body is changing throughout a moon cycle. So many fertility issues, that we see, especially in queer folks who are trying to conceive. Um, it's been going on for years, and so yeah, those are the things that I would say, is that I wish we would start that body literacy early. And I wish that when you have a nutty friend like me who wants to be telling you to put a mirror between your legs, we would lean on each other and go, okay, so I did it. This is what I saw. And I really don't know what the hell is going on, but I would like to know. So tell me what you know, and help me understand what I should be looking for, because we do have a wealth of information, even betwixt girlfriends, between friends. And I wish that we use that more often.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that, and I know Holly Berry is kind of on a menopause tour, right? And like providing more education around this and a number of others. But I feel like that wasn't a real conversation that people were having openly. And maybe it was just maybe people were having it and I wasn't noticing it because of the age that I was at. But it feels like that's a newer conversation, at least in the last decade ish, to be more openly talking about that and having specific services offered specifically around menopause. So to your point, it does feel like the level of care and the types of conversations and the transparency and the vulnerability, even amongst each other within community, wasn't quite happening in the way that people needed it to, and probably still isn't happening where, like, what you're describing, where we would want it to go, but it feels like it's progressing in the right direction. It's still really interesting though, like how uncomfortable those topics are for folks. And it's like, that's a part of life. Like, it's a stage that every single woman is going to go through. But people just, again, maybe I was just too young. It felt like people just never talked about menopause, which is wild.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
might be having a hot flash now.
Come on, where's the fan? Come on, where's your hibiscus tea?
I don't have it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's turn to you, Tiffany. Same question.
Yeah, I think things you can do every day. I think it starts with self-awareness, right? Because we don't know what we don't know. The body and the mind are wonderful things, and they're adaptable. So let's say you grew up in a bad situation growing up, and you have bad habits. Your emotional well-being, your mental well-being is out of whack. If you go to therapy and learn how to control those issues better, you'll have a better outlook. If you are trying to diet, trying to eat better, when you start eating better, you start feeling better. So you can those things are the mind and body are adaptable. We can change those things. So I think self-awareness, number one, and then once you're self-aware, boundaries. It's boundaries. No is a very powerful thing. I, for one, I love happy hour, but sometimes I got to tell them no. You know what I mean? Like I have to say no, because guess what? If I do this, I probably won't wake up as early. I will probably eat a trash meal late at night, and throw myself off of, the goal that I have in mind. So I think, checking in with yourself, asking yourself, do I need rest? Do I need more water? Do I need to not eat meat today? Do I need to go for a walk? Consistently being self-aware, checking in with yourself, are things you can small things you can do every day. And like she said earlier, you don't have to do the whole hour workout. Do what feels right for you. If you can only go outside and walk to the mailbox, hey, that's, you're starting. So, doing things that make you feel good, singing karaoke at home in front of your TV, meditating, sitting in silence, having anxiety because you feel pressure to go to this birthday, and you really don't want to go. Like it's okay to say no, So I think just being self-aware, listening to how you feel. If you feel extreme anxiety about having to do something you really don't want to do, it's okay to say no and, be at peace.
Yeah, no is a full sentence. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. That certainly resonates. So I said I'd circle back to this. I'm listening to a podcast called The Diary of a CEO. And there are people with a lot of different views on that podcast. And there's a lot of multiple topics that get covered, but almost to the point where there are people who have like literally opposite views that are on different episodes, which is really interesting from my perspective. There's a lot of people talking about wellness and working out and protein. And, it's clear there's to everything you're saying here, there's no one right answer for everybody. Mm-hmm. What would you say to, someone that's just thinking through like, do I move towards being vegan or vegetarian? Do I need to pay attention to my protein intake? I'm a certain age. How do I manage my vitamins and my minerals? And like, what advice would you give to someone that's thinking through and navigating one, like the nutrition of it all, Whitney, for you, but Tiffany, for you, like, I'm not going to get to that, whatever my goal was in my 20s or my 30s workout, but what's the bare minimum that I should be doing if I have a goal to like maintain or to, you know, get fit? I imagine it's different if you're, you know, and there's a debate about like cardio versus weight training and all of those things. And a great debate, right? Like it kind of depends on what you're going for. But I guess what would you say as someone's thinking through those things and a part of like how they move their bodies and what they pay attention to?
I would say, you know, that is a great debate. And you know, being a therapist and being someone who's certified to do personal training and all these things, cardio is basically for cardiac health. It's going to have some benefits. You're going to lose weight. You're going to do all the things. But strength training is very important for the muscles, for the bones, and to continue to keep those calories burning and keep your metabolism up. So it's very important. You know, a lot of women say, oh, well, I don't want to do weights because I don't want to be bulky. Well, then, you know, if that's the case, you're going to change your reps, how many reps you do versus your weight. So I think whatever the goal is, you need to either do some research or talk to a professional about how to exactly achieve that goal. You know, if you're trying to build muscle, you do want to do protein intake, you know, after each workout, you know, 20 to 30 grams. You want to do that. If you're just doing cardiac health, there's tons of different cardio that you can do. So I think it just it's going to depend on your end goal and getting the right resources to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think the wake up call for me and just paying more attention to this in the last couple of years is, you know, oh, you don't, the question like, do you want to do strength training? Do you want to walk when you're 80? You should probably do the strength training now. Right. So that's where it is for me now. It's like, okay, what does 80-year-old Janet want? Maybe I need to go ahead and get up and suck it on up and get this strength training in because we got it. It's our elderly versions of ourselves will thank us. So on the nutrition part, let me come to you. Thoughts on that? You're delayed on my end. Is it just me?
No, it's me too. I can't hear.
We can't hear you. I know you have some good nuggets. We'll maybe try to come back to you. I'll jump to the next question and then we'll come back to you because I know you have some good things to add. So the last question is and before we go to questions for the chat, so if you do have questions, please drop them in the chat. We'll be sure to come to those. But the last question that I have is, what does the future of collective wellness look like to you? And what roles do food and movement play in getting us there, as well as any resources that you'd want to share? So we'll start with you, Tiffany, and hopefully we can get into that.
Yeah, you know, food and movement are essential and synonymous to good health. Food is part of our culture, right? I pulled some facts. 60% of Black adults 20 and up have some form of disease, including coronary artery disease, heart failure, stroke, hypertension, and that's higher than 49% across the board of other races. We like to eat, you know, we like salty stuff, we like fried stuff, we like greasy stuff. And that's one of the reasons I developed my product, is to have a lower sodium impact that won't impact the flavor. Hypertension is one of the major causes of stroke. I had a patient recently, 40 years old, had a stroke. Now half of his body doesn't work. And that takes on a whole nother, you know, mental aspect of it. You know, here you were fit, working out, doing all the things every day, successful. And now half of your body doesn't work and you need help doing everyday tasks. And And I actually asked this patient, I said, you know, were you taking your blood pressure medication? And the answer was no. He thought that, hey, I can go work out a few times a week and, you know, I'm good. I'm not going to listen to the doctor. Then he ended up having a stroke. So just small things you can do. Own a blood pressure cuff. You know, take your blood pressure. You can buy one at CVS for $40. You can go to Amazon, probably get one for cheaper. But if you know you've had an issue, you've gone to the doctor before and they said, hey, it's a little high, you know, that's an indicator. Hey, maybe I should kind of check this every once in a while and try to start listening to my body. And then if you are prescribed something, then, you know, it's best you take it. Now you can reverse these things with a good, healthy diet. But sometimes you need both. So hypertension is, I want to say 90% of my patients, they have hypertension. And it's related to a whole host of other comorbidities and other complications. Heart failure, Black adults, 50% of hospitalizations are heart failure from Black adults, and then 50% is others. So we absolutely need to do a better job at our intake, and that goes just back to being self-aware, educating yourself about the right foods to eat. And that's a part of community, right? So what she said earlier, you know, talk to your friends, talk to your coworkers, you know, ask them, well, how do you stay in shape? If someone's in shape, you know, what do you do to, you know, keep your weight down, or, you know, things like that. Go to exercise groups, you know, join the local running club, join the local biking club. Community tribes are going to be very important, and just essential with today's culture, and trying to stay on track and live a full, healthy life.
Thanks for that. Whitney, I think we have you back.
Am I back?
You are.
Wonderful. Tiff, I'm so sorry that I didn't get to hear that. I cannot wait to rewatch this and Glenn, what you just had to share. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
So I'll double back real quick to before. I think especially with that question about like discipline. And so like what would I tell people who are just starting that journey is, if you have an Instagram algorithm that's like mine, which you probably do because you're connected to the Good Lounge, the gurus are going to tell you discipline, discipline, discipline. And while I think discipline is important, I think, again, reframing or finding a new definition for a new word is dedication. Are you really dedicated to 6 a.m., 4 a.m., ice plunge, taking a tincture every day, knowing good and well tinctures don't taste good? Maybe not. And so, you know, as Tiff said, working with professionals that help you figure out what's the regimen that helps you to meet your goals, dedicate yourself to that. And I think, you know, the TikTok algorithm is great for Googling. I think, you know, YouTube has some really great long form content that'll help you learn more deep dives. Instagram is great for finding professionals, you know, who might offer a service that will help you with that. Whatever your goal is, do your research, sure, build your community, you know, tap into those folks who are offering services, but dedicate yourself to 2 or 3 things. And instead of trying to fix it, first just notice it. And then I think, you know, what Tiff was getting at before I left was, you know, you don't know what's right for you until you start it, you know. And I tell all my families that I serve as their doula, you know, you won't flow until you go, you know, like we don't know what's going to work for you until we try something and figure out, oh, that doesn't work. And it is a risk when it comes to time. But it's a risk that we have to take if we're going to start something. So that's that. What was the last question, Janet?
Yeah, I got you. What does a future of collective wellness look like to you? And what roles do food and movement play in getting us there, as well as any resources that you want to share with this community?
Yeah. Oh, I think what it looks like for me is having Black families mirror the past a little bit and have that subsistence farm or garden patch at the house, leaning less on these commercial food avenues. One of the things that I love doing is, folks who I support who are having a miscarriage, planting herbs in their front yard to really help them, move forward, and, making sure that people have access to fresh tea. I think, leaning on tisanes and teas are one of the ways that we have always been connected to the earth. And so, being able to take things out of my garden and plop them, in someone's front yard have been a really cool futuristic way, that I've been thinking lately. I also think for us to continue to lean more on each other in that community sense, and really take back our power. We used to be a people who could walk out into any grass and say, "Oh, I know who that is. Oh, I know what that is, and I know how to use it." And, "Oh, my grandma used it this way." And, we've lost that. And so I think one of the ways that I've been really thinking about pushing people forward is, doing herb walks with little ones. I actually, later on in this month, I have a group of young Black kids and their parents come in to pick stuff out of my yard, and us being able to, make salves together for their bug bites. Like, I think, sure, dreaming futuristically is really, really fun because we do have to imagine for this next generation of people, but a lot of these blueprints we have already. And so trying to figure out how to make them fit into 2025, but they've never really gone away. So yeah, that's the way that I think I've been thinking about it. And I think just encouraging people to show up when they are when they are in community, find the community, encouraging people to show up authentically. And for me, I'm the home girl. You know, what you want to chat about, what you want to talk about, what do we need to discuss, what lemons do we need to squeeze, and I think that bringing that back and bringing that vibe back, has been a really cool way that I've been able to push and challenge my community forward. They know I'm down to have a talk, and even the hard talks. And I think that that's something that's really going to move us closer to trusting each other to care for each other. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. And I do have
And
another question for you based on the community garden comment, and then maybe a comment. So one is just, I'm learning that, my grandfather's tomato and the nutrients that were in his tomato are not going to be the nutrients that are in my tomato if I were to grow a tomato. And so I mean, maybe there's nothing that we can do about that, or there's things that we need to supplement based on that. But that was actually mind blowing for me to just understand, like, the minerals and nutrients in the ground are not the same as my grandfather's minerals and nutrients. So I would like you to comment on that, Whitney. But before you go there, on the family garden and the home garden point, there's also like a mental well-being component of that, because you're in the earth, you're growing something yourself, you're, seeing something from the beginning to producing fruit. And so more than just the results of being able to have something that you can eat from a nutritional perspective, it feels like there's also a mental well-being component of having your own, sourcing your own, and being able to share that with others. So we'd love your thoughts on it, on either of those comments. We lost you again. We can't hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. While we're trying to get Whitney back, Tiff, any thoughts from you on that?
yeah, I did want to share another tidbit about, as far as cooking. Um, Tony Chachere's, Lowry's, Slap Your Mama, we use these products all the time. Tony's has 340 milligrams of sodium in a fourth of a teaspoon. Lowry's has 380 milligrams of sodium within a fourth of a teaspoon. The Bulls Bayou has 72.5 milligrams in a fourth of a teaspoon. So this is a product that I really am working to try to push to our community. I feel like it should be a staple in every home versus the Tonys, versus the Lowrys. It's keeping us sick. It's keeping us in the hospital. It's keeping us with stroke, hypertension, heart disease. So I think just, trying to get the word out. And like she said, speaking of gardens, my dad has a garden. The other day he was like, all right, I got some tomatoes, I got some jalapenos for you. So it's sitting right on my counter, and I love his fresh vegetables. I don't have a green thumb myself, but it's something that I haven't really taken the time out to really, divulge in. But, hopefully one day I can get to that point, because I agree. It definitely does something to your mental, knowing that, your hands are in the dirt and you're watching this grow from nothing to something.
Well, Tiff, and I'll even add, it's not even just knowing that you grew a thing, because by the time that it comes out the ground, we passed that. Okay.
Yeah.
I have put blood, sweat, tears, a couple $100 into this ground. And so, there are so many life lessons to be learned in the garden. It's not just what the garden can produce or what the earth will produce to us, because it's been doing that.
Yeah.
It's about, how do we relearn patience? How do we relearn, I really wanted to get XYZ done today.
Yeah.
But it's been raining for 5 days, and all of my good topsoil has gone away, and I need to go and find it. How do I dedicate myself to, it's not going to be pretty now, but it's going to be gorgeous once its season comes, and not everything has to bloom in this season. Yeah. And so one thing that I've learned from my great friend Colleen is that you can want to start that spring garden all you want to, but you should have been thinking about that 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And so now we're here. And so what are we going to do with, you still have it on your heart to have a garden, but now we got to look that way, and we got to let that go. And so I think that's the beautiful, the sort of therapeutic part. Also, moving wood chips in a big pile over and over and over again, that's therapy. Doing it without your music, with your music, being intentional about what you're listening to, that's therapeutic. Doing it with other people, that kind of labor, it's important. And cardio is going to get you to sweat. You're going to need to, it's going to encourage you to drink water. And then, Jana, to your point of the research says that the soil is not the same as our grandfathers, my grandmothers. Sure, it's not. And the soil was not the same for their grandmothers, or their grandmothers, or their grandmothers, and their grandmothers were slaves, especially if you're Black or Irish. And so, especially in this United States of America and its history, the soil has never been the same. And especially at the advent of race-based slavery, we have been continuously reducing that fertility of the soil with monocrop culture. So, sure, maybe it's not the same, but also one thing you'll learn, and Janet, that's how I know you don't got no garden, is we live in 2025. So you can take a little bit of that soil and go down to, and I forget which branch of agriculture it is, but you can take it to somewhere locally. And Colleen, put it in the chat because I done forgot. But you can take your soil in a jar to somewhere in your county. They will test it for you and tell you what you need. If you want your grandfather's tomatoes to taste the way that they do now, Tiff, ask him what else is he growing next to it. Because your family might plant basil next to it. Mine might plant dill. Mine might plant marigold. Someone else's might plant nasturtium, and that's how we also boost the taste. But again, especially when you're in a garden, nutrients, these are things that we add.
Yeah.
And every time we grow something from soil, we will deplete it. Same thing I tell all my people who get pregnant. Every time you grow something in your body, at the end of it, you're going to be depleted. Blood, tissue, bones are different because of the hormones acting upon those bones and joints. You want to talk about gaining weight and joints. Your vitamins are different because you've built something and now it's no longer with you. It has to take it away. That's natural. But how do we put it back? Going back to the self-care nuggets. And one last thing I'll say is, you know, I had an old, and I'm not going to do too much on the old, but I had an elder grand midwife tell me, you know, she's like, it's so cute. Y'all ask me what's self-care? You know what's self-care for me? Setting obtainable goals. I don't tell myself I can do more than I can actually do. And I think that especially as you find yourself, you know, on this journey, even me with these technical difficulties, baby, I'm doing the best I can. I'm gonna keep on jumping back on and showing up and seeing if this works differently, but I'm doing the best that I can. And I think that is also what gives back to us, is reminding us that this is just a part of being human. And we are lucky and blessed, even though it's rough in 2025, to be living and showing up as Black, as queer, as femme, as LGBTQI+, if you don't use that Q word, to be showing up this way. And so as we have those privileges, we just have to take care of ourselves, try to take care of those around us, and show up in all of that doing and healing. And herbs are going to do the same thing. Herbs show up in their season, and they ain't going to show up outside of their season. And if they do, we have a different problem on our hands.
That speaks to me deeply. And you're right, I do not have a garden. And wasn't paying enough attention when my mother and father had theirs, and they've grown stuff over the years, and I have siblings with gardens. So a lot of good lessons in there. I did recently see, and this could be completely false, but if you spit on a seed, it is then going to grow the deficiencies that you have potentially. Is that real?
Say it again. It can grow the what?
If you spit on a seed, or if you have a seed in your mouth, based on what it's detecting is missing from your saliva, I guess, it will try to like make sure whatever plant is growing will then like help provide those missing nutrients for you. That could be completely false.
You know, I'm sure somewhere somebody in an agriculture lab has figured that out, and that's cool. But I don't know. But it kind of makes sense to me. Could make sense to me when infants are sick, and if they are being fed at the breast or chest of their parent or anyone, actually. Once that saliva sits on the receptacles in that nipple, our bodies will then make antibodies to combat whatever sickness is in that infant, and then produce it and give it through milk. So sure, I'm not surprised by the earth in any way. I'm sure Mother Nature has figured out some way to give us what we need. That wouldn't surprise me.
Super interesting. Okay, we did have a question in the chat. So, what are the best ways to build a strong sense of community in a place where everyone is new to the area and does not have established roots? This is coming from one of my transplant friends. So definitely, any thoughts on this? We'll start with you, Whitney.
Yes. Okay. So, we moved to Durham in 2020. We had some great friends who also moved to the area about that time. And it took years for us to find each other. But, you know, one of the things that I said to do earlier was figure out what your goals are. Theirs was to build a family. They wanted to have a baby. I just so happened to be in the area doing this work and having good enough marketing that they found me on Instagram. So the professionals trying to get you to understand the services that they provide, because this is what they're immersed in. And then we met for a consultation free over coffee, just like that. Showed up authentically, right? Had questions for each other. It was reciprocal. And then I got to provide them, you know, the service that I provide to many families in our area. And them being queer from the South, excited about growing a family, not having family in the area, we got a chance to lean on each other. And as I showed up for them, they were like, "We love you," and I was like, "I love you down." So now what? And now their baby is TT's baby, and I'm around, for birthdays, and they're around for family, my vow renewal, and so it just takes that. Go out there and live your life, and try to connect with people. I think that
Mhm.
that's the most gorgeous things about plants too. My mentor would tell me, if you're sick, yeah, go walk, go take a walk. And the plant allies that are around you even will show you what you need. A lot of the times people talk about dandelion being a weed. Dandelion is one of the most powerful soothers of allergies. You can use the whole thing: root, stem, leaf, flower, if you catch it in enough time, right? But you have to go out with your heart open and say to the earth,
Mhm.
show me what it is that I need. And you have to have your eyes ready. And that's the part. I think we have a lot of heart open people, but you have to have your eyes open, ready to say, oh, I know that. I know what that
Mhm.
is, and I think that might be able to help me. And when you don't know, have this humility to ask, can this help me? Otherwise, you're going out and foraging things. And so I'm not encouraging people to just go foraging, but I'm just saying, metaphorically, have your heart open, sure, you know, but also have your eyes open, and really try to source. Because we do. I just believe, especially when you're moving to somewhere new. I've moved to Virginia. I've moved from Alabama. I've moved to Harlem, back, down south to Durham, North Carolina, and in all of those spaces, I've been able to create really beautiful community around me, um, because of that kind of intentional seeking and showing up. So,
Mhm.
Yeah. No, I mean, that resonates for me. Go out and have your heart open. I have a good friend that would always say, people aren't going to break into your house to build community, right? Like you have to actually go
Mhm.
outside. And sometimes I need to be reminded of that as an introvert.
Mhm.
But yes, like in order to build community, you have to be around people. And to your point, have your heart open, and be open for those connections in that community. And I mean, I also have to just plug the Good Lounge. So please join the Good Lounge in-person events.
yeah.
We are always looking to grow and build community and connect people with each other. Tiffany, anything else you want to say on that question?
Yeah, I think, like she said, just being intentional. I've never moved. I'm from Houston, Texas. I've never moved. But one of my best friends came from Florida a few years ago. And when she got down here, she was going on like Bumble and stuff and meeting people, and like she's masculine of center. So she was like meeting masculine, of center women. And I was like, oh, is that what you're into? And she was like, no, I just want friends. And I was like, that's something I would have never done. But I've met some amazing people through her. And I think she went out, she was intentional about making friends, kind of creating her own niche, her own tribe. And so it's been successful for her. And your events, and some of the other events around the city, I've met some amazing people as well. So I think just being intentional, and if it's something that you don't vibe with, if it's something that doesn't make you feel good, if you have anxiety, if you have like, oh, well, I don't feel open talking to this person or that person, don't do it. Boundaries. Say no, and find your tribe, and but be open at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great plug. I met a great friend off of one of those apps back in the
Hmm.
day. So yeah,
Yeah,
definitely people will share like just looking for friendships and
right.
that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
totally agree with that as a tip. One last question here from the chat. So shopping organic, is it worth the extra cost?
Mm.
Yes, don't get me wrong. There are some things, absolutely. And actually, the Environmental Working Group does a list every year. They do a survey of growing patterns, from some of the biggest, growers in America. A lot of people don't know that all your strawberries that you get, no matter what the season, they're coming out of California. Most of the peaches that you're going to get, they're actually not coming from Georgia like you think. They're coming from South Carolina. And so they put out, a sort of list every year called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. The Dirty Dozen is a list of the top the top 12 um, produce in the country that's being grown with heavy pesticides. The Clean 15, things that you don't necessarily need to buy organic, because they're not being grown with pesticides anyway. They're doing well in their climate. The growers know how to sort of manage disease without pesticides, but those dirty dozen are being grown with lots of pesticides. And so again, the importance is that we know that pesticides are one of those things. We hear people kind of vaguely talking about how America is allowing things on the shelves that other countries aren't. And those things are, of course, additives and things like that, and chemicals, but also pesticides that we know cause cancer, that we know cause infertility, and that we know can change our health on a cellular level that might be harmful. So that's why it would be important, but it's, just kind of those differences.
Yeah.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. We're about to wrap up. Let's shift to our giveaways. Tiffany, you have a couple. You want to share those with the audience?
Yes, I do. So for the first 3 people that comment Bayou in the comments, I'm going to send you a 3-pack of the Bulls Bayou seasoning. So Bayou, Bayou, in the comments, first 3 people, I will send you this for free. And then additionally, if you go to my website, www.thebullsbayou.com, until Monday, all of my products you're gonna get 50% off if you put the Good Lounge at checkout. Everything will be 50% off until Monday.
That's awesome, Tiffany. And why do they want the Bulls Bayou seasoning? I love it, but I don't know if everybody's really clear on why they want that. Can you share a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the biggest thing. It's low sodium. It's low sodium. It's packed with flavor. I have 3 versions. I have a regular version, I have a spicy version, and then I have a all vegan version. The regular and spicy do have chicken broth in it. So if you are vegan, please order the vegan one. If you don't mind chicken, the regular and the spicy are great go-tos for your dinner. It's great for meal prep. It's great for the experienced chef. It's great for the person cooking for the first time. So, and the good thing about it is it's not salty, so you don't have to worry about over seasoning if you're not an experienced cook. So I say try it. You can use it every single day. And it's just a great product to have on your shelf without reaching for 10 different things at one time. All the seasonings we use in our kitchen, it's a one-stop shop.
Perfect. We love good seasoning. Whitney, you have a awesome giveaway too. You want to share that?
Yeah, so I'm super excited to offer a free herbal consultation. And so what you'll do is you'll just go to www.wellcarecollective.com. You'll go to the contact page, and the very first person who signs up for an herbal consultation will get our monthly box. So it is generally a subscription, but we're just going to ease you in with your first month or your first season's box. What I do is I sit down with community and I talk with them about, what are your reproductive goals? What are some of the things, that are popping up as you're on that body literacy journey? Is it that you need a tea before you get ready for bed? Is it that you need a tea for some of those perimenopausal symptoms? Do you want to try tinctures for the first time? Are you interested in salves? I have a lot of people who love my rose and cayenne salve for a lot of different reasons. Some people, which they're wild girls, but some folks like to use it for sensual play, so warming it between your hands and putting it on your body, your partner's bodies, and then being able to blow across it is a really fun salve. But people also use it to numb their feet before they put on their heels for the office. People are using it to do womb rubs and rub their bellies as they're having cramps for their periods. It's a really fun, just warming, restorative salve. But I have all kinds of salves. So you'll be getting whoever signs up first. I won't know until you do it, and we won't know till we get into your free consultation. But honey, I hope it works out for you. And you'll be getting 2 of those 3 products. So a tea, a tincture, or a salve, which are traditionally the ways that we as Black people have provided or herbal support to each other. So Can't wait to
Excellent.
see you. And if you also want to, you can follow me, orders dot by Ola's Herb Garden. I'll put that in the chat.
Thank you so much. So first, let me just thank you both for joining this webinar and sharing lots of great tips and insights based on your own skills and expertise. A reminder for anybody on today, if you want to donate, it's thegoodlounge.org/donate, or follow us on Instagram. The donation support resources and giveaways that we have, always excited to bring our webinars and in-person events to you. And I look forward for more folks subscribing at thegoodlounge.org. So with that, I want to just, again, thank you both for your time and for sharing with our audience. I hope everybody listening has a great evening.
All right.